North Koreans were disorganized and full retreat. The rumor was home by Christmas.
Some 20,000 Allied soldiers headed into the high country. They expected little resistance, but they ran into over 100,000 battle-hardened Chinese troops. Charlie Kingston recalls the fighting.
It was one hell of an experience the first time we got into heavy combat.
The Chinese surrounded the Allied troops, but the UN soldiers found themselves fighting more than mortars and bullets.
We were told that we had temperatures of 35 to 40 below zero, and with a wind chill factor of 75 to 100 degrees below zero.
It was very cold, especially for a southern man. I can tell you this, an aluminum canteen of water would freeze in 30 seconds.
We received cold weather gear, and we received the cold weather parka with hood, cold weather trousers, wool socks, gloves, some with trigger fingers, and we wore everything that we possibly could put on, such as long underwear, flannel shirts, field jacket, anything to try and keep warm.
When temperatures plunged to minus 30 degrees Fahrenheit, most people clapped their hands together, moved their arms in a windmill motion, or just stamped their feet to keep warm. But pinned down in foxholes, these soldiers couldn't even use their sleeping bags to keep out the cold.
We learned the lesson the hard way when we first received the sleeping bags. Your breath would condensate and form ice on the zipper, and in an emergency, you couldn't get out. We had Marines clubbed to death and bayoneted in the sleeping bags.
Simply put, the Army was not prepared.
Well, most of the gear in Korea was lightweight. It wasn't designed for severe cold. It was clearly not designed for a cold, wet environment that they have in Korea, and often the footwear was just combat boots. They tried felt boots, but once wet, those things were worthless. They tried over boots, and that worked fairly well, but not real well. You'll see it just looks like a standard leather combat boot, and because of that, they just got nailed pretty badly.
James McGowan battled the cold at Chosin. He remembers the footgear.
It took an evil man to invent them. Had a rubber bottom with a leather top. When you walk, your feet sweaty. When you stop, you just froze. It'd be a cake of ice.
Against all odds, the Allies fought their way out of Chosin, but they paid a stiff price. Of the 20,000 Allied troops at Chosin, more than half were killed or wounded in battle, and thousands more suffered frostbite.
One of my men in my platoon found me, and he tried to get my boots off and couldn't get my boots off. Eventually, they had to cut my boots off because they was froze on my feet.
I got frostbite in both feet and right hand.
Veterans of the battle at Chosin gather in Lake Charles, Louisiana. Like thousands of others who survived winter battles, the old soldiers began experiencing aches, pains, and other complications as they aged into their 50s and 60s. Ernie Pappenheimer lost all his toes to frostbite.
I have cracking, bleeding feet, arthritis, sore muscles, intolerance to the cold.
A staggering 6,000 victims of cold injuries shipped out of Korea during the winter of 1950-51. Today, equipment and training prepare soldiers for cold weather combat.
And our current clothing ensemble is quite effective. Soldiers like it. They're able to use it in wide range of temperatures and climatic situations. And it's expensive, but it does the job.
Despite advances in cold weather clothing, the threat of frostbite remains very real. Malcolm Daly's climbing equipment couldn't ward off 2 days of sub-zero exposure. But the climber did benefit from progress in the treatment of cold injuries.
30 years ago, I think if the rule was if it was take it off. Now it's like, let's keep them clean, let's keep them from getting infected, and let's see what heals, what's left after the black falls off.
Malcolm Daly carries reminders of Thunder Mountain. He lost the tip of one toe, and he'll likely limp because of the leg injury. Chuck Bonning sports permanent scars from Alaska. Even before setting off for McKinley, Bonning experienced some apprehension about the cold.
Told
my family, if something does happen, just don't leave me up there. Get me down off that mountain.
Climbing guide Blaine Smith says the McKinley's climbing team's perception's upside down. At 6,000 meters, with life hanging in the balance, the will to survive blocks out everything else.
Frostbite's pretty insidious. You know, once you go numb, you don't think about it anymore. It's not, this part that is freezing doesn't demand your attention anymore. And so it wasn't until the next morning that he said, gee, I think I froze my hands.
It was already too late for Chuck Bonning to save his frozen fingers, but he did get off McKinley with his life.
And every day during recovery, I would surprise myself. I would open the door, or I would